I was listening to the news just now on Morning Ireland Radio 1, RTE Radio 1, and there was a small, brief interlude for business news. And the business news was that share prices on the stock markets around the world had recovered the losses of the previous day, but hadn't recovered them all. So this chap had reported that stock markets had fallen over the last few days, depending on what part of the world you're in, anything between 3 and 5% because of the massing of troops on the Ukrainian border, Russian troops. And then yesterday, one day later, after the fall, there was a massive uptick in prices because Putin had pulled away some of the troops massed on the Ukrainian border. So this guy was explaining sort of breathlessly, that might be a bit unfair, but he was explaining that the market had fallen by, let's say, 3% to 5% on the 14th of February and had recovered then by 3 to 4% on the 15th of February. In other words, all the recovery hadn't taken place. But quite frankly, this information, stock market share prices going down on one day or going up on one day, is complete nonsense information. It is pure BS, because if you are investing in shares, you should be investing in shares with a time horizon of at least 5 years. And if that's the case, the fact that stock markets fell by 4% or 3% on the 14th of February 2022 and recovered all of that the next day, or nearly all of that the next day, is complete BS. It's irrelevant in the overall context of a proper investment plan with a long-term time horizon. The fact that markets or shares or individual shares go up or down on any given day is completely irrelevant. Quite frankly, it's not news. Now, I know the chap was trying to make the best, I suppose, of whatever was going on in the business world, and from a pure news perspective, perhaps it was news. The market had fallen by 3 or 4% one day and had recovered the next day. But markets will fall and they'll rise and they'll recover and they'll decline and there'll be setbacks and there'll be corrections and so on. But if you are an investor and you're thinking about investing in shares, then paying any attention to the likes of that reporting or that sort of information is something that's going to drive you bananas, and is something that you really shouldn't waste your time on. If you feel that prices going up or down, moving on a daily basis, which inevitably they will do in any market, if you feel that that's going to jerk your chin or cause you stress or anxiety, you should really reconsider investing in shares at all. Don't bother, because you need to have a long-term perspective. You need to be able to ignore daily rises and falls of share prices. And remember, a share price rising or falling doesn't necessarily reflect the company or the company's performance, the underlying performance of that company. All it reflects is external factors. For example, Russia massing troops on the Ukrainian or Belarus border or whatever. But if you are going to be influenced, or your decision making is going to be coloured by movements like that, then, as I say, you should really avoid shares, because you really need to have a mindset of, this is 2022. In 5 years' time, do I think that companies are going to make profits and have increased earnings and increased share prices in 5 years' time? And those increases will be reflected on the various stock exchanges. If that's the case, and that is a likelihood, in fact it's almost a certainty. Why? Because that's what's happened for roughly 100 years. If that's the case, and if you believe that that's the case, then you can safely invest in shares now, even invest in an index fund now, and sit tight, ignore the news, keep the head down, do what you do, and in 5 years' time, your investment will show a good return, or 7 years' time, or 10 years' time, or whatever. But you do need to have a time frame, a time horizon of at least 5 years, and you do need to be able to ignore daily movements and breathless reporting of rises and falls on a daily basis of individual shares or stock exchanges or stock markets, because quite frankly it is completely irrelevant and doesn't signify anything. Anyway, hope you find this video useful. If you do, I would appreciate if you gave it the thumbs up down below, and you may be interested in subscribing to my investing newsletter. I have an investing newsletter. You can sign up on my website, businessandlegal.ie. It's completely free. It's delivered to your inbox, and I send out by email tips and information about investing in shares, investing in property, what I've learned over the years from doing both, and from study and from my own practice, my own portfolios and my own experience in investing in both shares and property since around about 1986. To say, I hope you find this useful. If you do, give it a thumbs up down below, and you can sign up for my investing newsletter on businessandlegal.ie.